Okay, so we're going to talk today about face perception. And let's start by introspecting a little bit. Let's look at some faces like these right here and just look at them and think about what it's like to look at faces like this. It's an incredibly rich, evocative experience. It's like looking at somebody's whole persona, like their being, their personality. And it shouldn't be, it's just their face. It's just a part of their body, but you feel like you can see them in some sense. It's kind of really evocative and engaging. So I think that that little introspective tingle you get is informative. It's telling you something about what you're getting when you look at a stimulus like this. And so it's, I think, worth asking, why is this such a rich experience just to look at faces, right? I mean, looking at teacups isn't really as interesting. It doesn't do as much, at least for me, I think for most people. So I think a big part of the answer is there's just a huge amount of information in a face. So there's just all kinds of stuff you can tell about a person by looking at their face. Most obviously, you can tell who the person is, what their identity is. You can tell their age, their sex, their mood, their race, their direction of attention. So if I'm lecturing like this and I go like that, it's really hard not to think, even though you know I'm just doing this to weird you out. It's like, what is she looking at? Right? We're very, very attuned to all this stuff. We're attuned to tiny little expressions that flit across the face in a fraction of a second and go away. We're just very aware of all this stuff that happens on the face. Okay, and even beyond this kind of demographic stuff and basic expression and gaze, we feel like we can see personality in a face. People have very stable judgments about which faces are trustworthy and which are not. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. People agree on which faces are trustworthy. Further, faces are just plain one of the stimuli we look at more than pretty much every other. Maybe you guys look at numbers more than you look at faces or words, but they're right up there in the top, the 3 or 4 kinds of stimuli we look at all day. And finally, it's probably true, I usually hate kind of evolutionary BS where we don't really know, but it's probably true that face recognition abilities were really important for the survival of our ancestors. And so it's not crazy to assume it's not crazy to hypothesize that some aspects of face perception may be evolved. Okay, so face perception is worth studying just because we do it a lot, because it's rich and interesting, because they're important to us, faces are important to us. Let's start by thinking about it. So most of today we'll be talking about face identity, face recognition. Who is that person? Not all this other stuff, but we'll in the next couple of weeks talk about some of these other dimensions of faces. Okay, so how good are we at face recognition? Well, let's just try a few. I'll flash up some famous faces, and if you recognize them, clap. Okay, so that'll just get everybody a sense of the reaction time it takes to recognize a famous face. Okay, here we go. Nobody knows who that is? Okay. When you get it, clap, and don't clap before. Here's another one. Okay. A little bit harder. That's Scarlett Johansson. Not too hard, okay? Pretty good. I mean, not everybody knows all these faces, so if you don't know them, you don't know them. But if you know them, you're likely to recognize them pretty effortlessly and pretty quickly. And that can be true even if the photograph is pretty old and is not how the person currently looks. So clap if you recognize, if and when you recognize this person. Oh, no one's going to get it. Isn't that interesting? How many people recognize his face? 1. Oh, maybe it's like a demographic thing. No, it's Jon Stewart. Do you see it now? Okay, how about this next one is not quite as, that's about 15, 18 years ago. This next one is about 15 years ago from another famous person. Here we go, clap if you recognize this person. That one's a little easier. Okay, if you didn't get it, it's Hillary Clinton. Okay, here's one more. That was easy, huh? Okay, I couldn't tell whether it'd be easy or not before I turned gray. Okay, so that's pretty good. Like, these faces are pretty different from the way you usually see them these days. So that's pretty good. Okay, but good compared to what, right? So this is always a question that we have. It's hard to know good compared to what. A standard way to deal with that problem is to say good compared to what a computer can do. So a funny thing has happened in the last few years. It used to be that I could start any lecture on visual object recognition or face recognition and say, you guys are amazing at this. You leave completely in the dust all the most fancy computer vision systems for object recognition and face recognition. They can't even touch us, and so there are deep mysteries in the human brain that remain to be solved that no computer vision person has figured out. Well, you kind of can't say that so much anymore. I mean, it's still true in a little small ways, but just in the last 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden, machine vision, computer vision has just skyrocketed ahead. This is with the advent of deep learning, which has really benefited from 2 things. One is increases in computer power. So it's actually not smarter, qualitatively different kinds of algorithms that are being run. It's just kind of massive brute force computer power. And the other thing that's led to this is just the availability of huge numbers of photos to train these computer vision systems on. Of course, those come from the web. So with those 2 advances, all of a sudden, the modern in the last 2 years or so, computer vision systems are just doing spectacularly well. So computer vision types like to put these challenges on the web, and they'll put a stimulus set on the web, and they'll all try to compete with each other to design a computer vision system that can learn to identify whatever that stimulus set is. So there's a recent one that people are psyched about, and it's called Faces in the Wild, okay? Labeled Faces in the Wild. And so there's a bunch of these on the web, but the main one that's been used in computer vision is a set of 1 million images from 4,000 identities of famous people. Okay, and there's some image variation here. So here's a little segment of it here. You can look it up on the web. And what you see is for each identity, they're kind of variable faces. They're just kind of grabbed off the web. And there's just a little more image variation than there has been in previous computer vision challenges, where all the faces are perfectly aligned, lit the same way, front views, same angle, same lighting. And under those circumstances, computer vision face recognition was doing pretty well. And so now the thought was, okay, that's not very realistic. Let's do more in the wild type face recognition. So computer vision systems have been trying to grapple with this. Well, all of a sudden, they can do this too. So there's a paper that just came out this year by some people from Facebook who have come up with an algorithm called DeepFace. It's one of these neural net deep learning systems. And they claim in the paper that their method reaches an accuracy of 97% on labeled faces in the wild, closely approaching human level performance. So that's pretty amazing. But if you look at these, you'll see they're not all that realistic, right? Somebody went in there and took that photograph, aimed the camera in a certain way, took the photograph, threw out the 10 others where the face was blurred or the person was turning away or there was something in front of the face. Those ones don't land on the web. The ones that land on the web are the ones that, were framed a certain way and have a particular perspective on the face. Okay, so labeled faces in the wild is a much better data set than the previous computer vision challenges, but this one is still not all that wild. Okay, so there's limited ranges of head orientation. As I mentioned, the photographs are all, just stuff people put on the web. So that's not all that representative of what you see when you go around in the world. Okay, so this database does not have pictures that are that have occlusion, like for example from sunglasses, or that have variations in head angle more than just about 30 degrees like this. So let's try a few faces that do have those. Clap if you recognize this person. Okay, that's not too hard, Meryl Streep, right? Her eyes are mostly occluded. Okay, clap if you recognize this person. Well, you got it. Okay, I couldn't tell how far to turn my head. Okay, it's very hard to find these. That's why you're looking at this. There's so many pictures of me up here, so I couldn't find these on the web, so I had to get my boyfriend to come out and take weird pictures of me. Okay, so you guys do pretty well with that. DeepFace can't handle these, okay? DeepFace can only deal with this narrow range of image variation, so it's much better than previous ones, but it's still not up to human performance when you have real faces in the wild.